Hello? It's working? Welcome, everyone. I will be the mediator today. My name is Sabah Abid, and I'm a student at Roskilde University, where I'm currently taking my master's in public administration, and I have a bachelor degree in international development studies as well. And I'm very interested in foreign politics and of the topic of today. I would like to present the program first because you didn't receive that. There will be 3 presentations before the break at around 3:30, and then we will have the remaining 4 presentations. And in the end, there will be a question and answer session. And then I would like to welcome you all about the seminar of the sanctions against Iran. The Organization for World Peace is an organization established in 2004 by Abid Ali Abid. The aim of the organization was to draw attention to the hurdles for achieving peace. Since the establishment of the organization, it has expanded its network to more than 30 countries, and the representatives in each country are known as ambassadors for peace. During the last 8 years, the organization have led several events and arrangements related to peace. For instance, we launched the magazine RATIONALE, which Abid Ali Abid is also the founder and co-editor of. It was established in May 2012. Scholars and journalists from different parts of the world are contributing to the magazine. Many countries around the world, for instance Pakistan, Afghanistan, Iraq, are daily facing troubles, and thousands of people are dying or living in conflict areas. And the vision of the organization is to highlight the unjustified harms upon innocent people and the invisible tools to harm others. In the case of the sanctions against Iran, we will after today hopefully get a bigger picture of the sanctions and how these are affecting on different levels. The seminar of today was also Abid's own idea, as he wishes to highlight the problems evolving around sustainable peace in the world. And he will also be giving a welcome to everyone and the first presentation of today. So please welcome him.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Ladies and gentlemen, I think Sabah, before I start, we can invite our panel here. It will be a good idea. So you please come and invite the panel here first. Everybody is welcome. She will invite the speaker of the day. Thank you.
Yes, let me do that. First, I would like to invite Dr. Roger Carbacho Moreno, who is the Charge d'Affaires of the Embassy of Venezuela. And then I would like to welcome Tue Magnussen, who's an academic researcher. And the ambassador of Iran, Mr. Yamira. And Mr. Christian Harlang,
he will be joining us later. Welcome, sir.
And the ambassador of Cuba, and Dr. Jan Øberg.
Thank you, all of you, for joining. It's really an honor for me to welcome all of you, and especially our chief guest, Mr. from Sweden. He is not only a reflection for us. I was honored to know about him. Very welcome, sir. And all my other friends who are sitting beside us. Today, according to, we have 15 to 20 minutes for all speakers. We have some open discussions, question answers, and we have a group of students from Copenhagen University, from Roskilde University, friends from Aarhus. Ladies and gentlemen, everybody is very welcome. Being a chairman of the Organization for World Peace, we are going to discuss, and I'm also going to put some light about sanctions against Iran. This is the topic of the day. But I think this is not only a one title. There are so many titles in one title. It's not only economical issue. It's not only humanitarian issue. It's not only international law issue. It's a universal issue. Because when we talk about the sanctions, there is a politics involved in it. When we talk about the sanctions, there is economical issues inside. There is humanitarian issues inside. And there is one part of the violence, and there are certain powers who are playing a dirty game with the name of the sanctions. Of course, beside me there are some intellectuals, academic. I'm a semi-political man, but when I talk about peace, there is no politics, because there are certain rules for the peace. Peace is not a word, it is an action. Peace is not only for today or for tomorrow. It is a dynamic process. Peace is not the meaning absence of war. The meaning of the peace is that everybody got some food at right time. This is not the peace that we don't have enough ammunition or soldiers, but in reality, peace is above of all other needs. Even in a home, even in our heart, in our body, if our body is upset, if our blood is not running correctly, we don't feel peace in our heart and mind. So let's see and discuss the issue that how the sanctions are affecting on the mind of the people. I was few months ago, in the last 2 years, luckily I have been in Iran 3 times. I have observed the attitude of the people. The most innocent people, in the way that they have never gripped their neighbors, even their enemies, they have never attacked. I would like to refer to one of the senators of the America. He said, and I have also documents in my hand, that the sanctions against Iran are entirely illegal. It's not my word. I'm talking according to the one American senator. He said, it is the right of the Iranian to get and to promote their self-right, right of self-determination, right of as an independent state. So nobody had the right to impose economical sanctions against them. Of course, the international community has certain concerns that certain technology is for certain nations. But the question is, who's enjoying, who is taking the benefit as a police officer or a policeman of the so-called peaceful world. Pakistan, I give one example. Pakistan has recently signed one agreement with Iran because Pakistan is in short of electricity, very, very critical situation. Our most of homes are up to 12 and 15 hours in just like blackout because we don't have enough electricity. Then we got an offer from Iran that yes, we can supply you certain amount of gas for the production and the use for industry and for the production of the electricity. And then we got threat from the great master, police master, USA, that if Pakistan will sign on this agreement and will get the gas from Iran, there will be imposed sanctions. Where is the humanity? What are the principles? I have one question to all members of the international community. Who are the major killers in this certain biggest war? Is it Iran? Is it Pakistan? Is it Asia? Or it is started from Europe and America? Who started it? These sanctions, I consider, is an unwanted, imposed war, one-sided war on the innocent people of the world. Since 62 years, shameful for every citizen, every person who is living in this earth, 62 years that Cuba is facing. Also sanctions. What are the benefit of it? Who is taking benefit? We are living in Europe, but in fact, more than $20 billion every year, Europeans are getting lost due to these sanctions against Iran. Because, let's see, I will refer one statement of the ambassador of Italy, who is serving in Tehran. He said, what benefit we are getting? We have industry, we have a lot of import, we have a lot of export to Iran, and the last is going, even though we are running in a very bad period, economical crisis, but to the sanction, the crisis are increased, and there is no logic behind. I was in about 30 years ago, when I was a student leader, I was invited by the Iraqi government to go there and to see as a student leader. People were living nicely. There was enough number of the youngsters, but so-called with the name of the weapons of mass destruction. What they did with the name of that? They imposed war. More than 1.5 million people died for nothing. And they are so-called pioneer of peace, human rights, the leader of United Nations, and the leader of the United States, and their allies. They are enjoying. I have one question to the world. If any country of the world, if somebody killed the other person, if there will be punishment or not? This is the question. This assembly, there will be punishment. A person who is responsible for the killing of the innocent, more than 1.5 million only in Iraq, what is the punishment for that guy? We must call such people bad guys. So in my views, in the sanctions imposed in certain countries, there are bad guys behind it. Because they are enjoying the most luxurious life in the world. They feel they are the most powerful. So, I must say that the power is not with the army. The power is not with the guns. The power is not with the aeroplanes. The power, your feelings when they are beating with the innocent people, when they are beating with the poor people, hungry people, thirsty people of the world. Let's see. There is a lack of medicine, but there are political interests. There are lack of, even Iranian government is nowadays have some crisis. They cannot send the money to their students. They are getting education. It means the enemies of education, the enemies of medicine, they are not the enemies of the government of Iran. There is no justified or legal option to impose sanctions against any country of the world. This is the result. Let's see and go and see the picture of North Korea. Why North Korea is crying and shouting today when the leadership of the North Korea said, enough is enough. This is not the voice of mine. This is not your voice, but this is the voice of a country who has been threatened by the superpowers all the times. Let them make them friends. No, use the policy. I will suggest to the diplomats as well. Ask your governments, don't go and to kill the people with the name of sanctions, war, and the other things. Don't be master, be a friend. And this is the policy of my organization as well. Friend, not master. Until you feel you are master, you cannot make any friend in your life. And this is the need of the time. Wherever you enter, country is destroyed. Entered in Iraq, country is destroyed. Entered in Afghanistan, country is destroyed. Entered in Libya, country is destroyed. How many countries you want to destroy? Can you destroy everyone living human in this world? It's not possible. So there is only one way, that we need one voice. We have to be together under the banner of one white flag, the flag of peace. The sanctions will not finish the crisis of the world. One thing more I want to add. Of course, in the beginning I said, I have my academic friends here. They will talk academically. Mr. Harlang will come. He's the expert of international affairs. I'm a man of emotions. Might be my speech don't touch your heart or mind, but I'm sure there is a truth in it. There is a reality in it. There are facts in it. And that facts we need to bring in front of the world. I will say sorry for the international media, especially the European media. They have closed their eyes. They look in the one way of the picture. They don't look in the different directions. And this is the tragedy. This is the really shocking thing in this modern world. Modern media are working like killers. I put the responsibility in the media of the West and the American as well. They are responsible. They are fully responsible for such sanctions. They are supporting the criminals. They are supporting the criminals of the world. And they should come and to face the justice. How they will face? There is only one way. Unity. Unity for your good aim. Unity for your rights. But unfortunately, I want to tell everyone, more than 50,000 people have been killed with the so-called war against terrorism only in Pakistan. More than 5,000 people have been killed due to the drone attack in Pakistan. And interestingly and shamefully, more than 4,800 were innocent civilians. So it means when you kill, and I'm sorry for the 2,800 people were killed in the World Trade Center, but only in Pakistan, with the name of terrorism, more than 50,000 people have been killed. And more than 5,000 have been killed only for the drone attacks. Because they are trying to buy the leadership of poor countries. People of Pakistan are not ready to sell themselves. But what they did, they buy some of the leadership, they bribed them, and they said, okay, now we need the access to your any place. What is this imperialism doing? What the Zionists are doing? This is shameful. And I will say a few more sentences about the sanction against Iran. That it has to, first, if they are thinking that it is the right step, so they have to face the critique of the world and don't manipulate the situation for their own benefits. In the end, I'm sure that my duty, my organization duty, and my friend's duty is to bring the issue to the people. But as I said, unfortunately, we don't have strong media. But I'm happy to see that we have certain friends. They are the supporter of the peace, and especially our friend from Sweden. He's doing a lot of work, and I was inspired when I read about his life, history, and work, and I congratulate such personality who are really doing a lot for this world. Let's see and listen what the other friend says. And in the end, I want to say one word. Not only one man can make a nation great and strong. This is the message that we cannot change the world by one person. We cannot change the world by one event. We need constant struggle, dynamic process. So, you all are our wings to fly for a better life, for a better world, for better understanding, and for the better world to live. God bless all of you. God bless all of you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm also looking very much forward to hear the panel about their views on the sanctions against Iran and who may be benefiting or losing from these sanctions. The first speaker, or the first presentation, will be made by Dr. Roger Carbacho Moreno, who is Venezuela's Charge d'Affaires in Denmark. It is a pleasure to see him today, despite of his busy schedule because of the presidential elections in Venezuela, which took place yesterday with the victory of Nicolas Maduro. Dr. Moreno is a very passionate person and has, in his time in Denmark, contributed to many magazines, articles, newspapers, and events about Venezuelan history, culture, and politics. Besides his professional experience as a diplomat, he also has academic experience as a professor within areas of modern history, architectural projects, and development projects. Dr. Moreno has, among other things, emphasized a lot on the strong democratic culture in Venezuela, where it is not only the technocrats who have influence on the society in Venezuela, but on the contrary, people have a huge influence, for instance, on constitutional reforms, which have been up for referendum and also outvoted. Dr. Moreno wishes to put forth the need for a proper and critical news source, and I'm looking very much forward to hear his presentation, so please welcome him.
Maybe I just say thank you, it's more or less all say. Well, first of all, I appreciate very much your invitation, and I wish to thank you to be here today. And maybe some of you or most of you are asking, what is Venezuela doing here? Well, according to international press media, as Mr. Abid say, we belong to the side of the bad guys. So that's the simple reason. But let me put it this way. Thank you to our friends, Cuba and Iran, by example, which are two countries that, according to its humanitarian principles and the limitation of resources, but the disposition to contribute to wealth and prosperity, they have the highest amount of social development, according, I repeat, to what they have available in health, in industry. By example, I always going to remain here the words of Chavez, which you can see in the film of Oliver Stone. We went to Cuba, by example, to fight against illiteracy, or to fight against not having doctors. 50% of our population 15 years ago, they never saw a doctor before. And thank you to Cuba, we have now total coverage in health to our population. And thank you to Iran. We went there to buy some factories to process milk and dairies according to our development degree and to our weather. It was the more suitable technology. And, by the way, to buy some bicycles. And the US government said that you were providing to us atomic technology. Well, there was no other option to call those bicycles atomic bikes. Before I start, just to put one example, about 14 years ago, maybe not so long, 13 years ago, Chavez was concerned about delivering health to our population. And you know that in many countries, one of the main causes of death is people unattended when they have a heart attack. And remember, 50% of our population used not to know what was a doctor. Well, in a program with Cuba, we went to a European company to buy heart rescues. We bought a lot of them. I don't remember the number, maybe you will know, but it was about, I'm not sure, but about 5,000 portable heart rescues to provide all these medical facilities. We paid it. We paid it 100% of the bill. We never received them because the European company say that according to US policies, they were object of one of the sanctions, a heart rescue. You can imagine how can you create a mass destruction weapon with a heart wrecker? I can't picture that. So let me start, please. In order to better outline the purpose of this meeting, let me just give you a minor tour. It is a geographical tour rather than a conceptual one, because I need to underline that an unilateral embargo upheld against other countries is an euphemistic way to undercover a weapon of imperialist domination. Let's start describing the main character of this analysis. It was a great leader whose recent death shocked my country, but also shocked our region. And it also shocked the entire world. And if there is any doubt who I'm talking about, I'm referring to the great and forever lasting commander Hugo Chavez, our former president. I would like to focus on what might be his strongest characteristic, his capability of saying things directly as they are and in a simple way. The hermetic and incomprehensible erudite did not appreciate his rhetoric, but the people became closer. Do you remember when Chavez condemned the cruelties of war rule by the President of the United States on the 2006 United Nations General Assembly? His exact words were, "It smelled sulfur. The devil was here yesterday." It is impossible to draw a more precise image of the injustice and inhumanity caused by war. He did something similar in another multilateral meeting when he stressed that government goes from summit to summit while the peoples go from abyss to abyss. With this direct phrase, he destroyed the imperialist intention of dictating an agreement on a free trade area with the USA and Latin America, which will clearly damage our countries. And by the way, in many occasions, the former Venezuela's president proposed to the United States of America to dissolve the unilateral economic and trade blockade upheld against Cuba, a blockade that has lasted more than 5 decades. Few listened to him until 2005, when he pointed out that American authorities are barking like dogs in their intents to prevent a possible condemnation from the 15th Ibero-American Summit regarding the economic, commercial, and financial sanctions upheld against Cuba by the United States. The Western media, as well as many of their leaders, were making a joke out of the vulgar and inappropriate language of a president. But what they really wanted was to hide the accusation pronounced by not one, but 22 independent nations, and based upon, for the moment, 13 previous United Nations resolutions, and finally includes the term blockade instead of the usual embargo. The difference between blockade and embargo is difficult to see in a first sight. The precise explanation requires a long and elaborated speech, something that will have undermined the effectiveness of Chavez's complaint. You remember, they are barking like dogs. Embargo, in its judicial meaning, is the retaining of goods in order to secure, in a legal way, the compliance with an obligation or debt. While blockade, as in the 1909 London Naval National Law Establishment, is an act of war, only applicable between warring states. It was clear to the 22 participating nations in the 15th Ibero-American Summit that the American action against Cuba could no longer be called an embargo, as it was a direct blockade with isolation, suffocation, and immobilization, with the intention of drawing the people and make them give up their decision to be independent and sovereign. A blockade means cutting all communication with the exterior, with the objective to obtain a capitulation with force or with hunger. Hugo Chavez decided to warn the Latin American people with a simple and effective message, preventing the strong possibility that the participating nations succumb to the pressure of the United States to prevent a final statement condemning his criminal act. The message of Hugo Chavez was heard, and the summit finally adopted the term, for first time, blockade in its final declaration. It was clearly a triumph to the commandant. And even the imperialist blockade against Cuba still exists. The usual hypocrisy has no more space in Latin America. So, I might ask here, did Iran commit any crime, or did the country didn't pay a debt which authorized the American liquidation of their goods? The answer is simple, no. So it is time now that the Westerns stop the imperialist attitude against our brother country, Iran. As Chavez often did, we cannot keep talking in an euphemistic way, and we cannot accept remaining calling this as an embargo. This is an illegal blockade against Iran, used as a weapon of imperial domination. A weapon, I must say, to prevent any South-South relation. But Chavez is not longer physically guiding the Bolivarian revolution, or claiming the world such thrust. In my country, now is the turn of a new president. His name is Nicolás Maduro. We know him as the son of Chavez, and he was elected yesterday by the majority of Venezuelan people in what is perhaps one of the most fair and transparent electoral process in the world. You will see how the imperialist force, neither will let him govern my country in peace. Also, with him, they will fail, because Chavez is alive and the struggles remains. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's a very interesting presentation, and I'm very sorry for your loss of the former President Hugo Chavez, but at the same time I'm also very happy to know how many people he were able to help. And I'm also surprised about the relation with Iran and Venezuela. The next speaker is Tue Magnussen, who holds a PhD in history from Copenhagen University. He took a double master degree from Roskilde University in geography and international development studies, and have a lot of teaching experience in high schools, whereafter he also worked as a teacher in Roskilde University, Copenhagen University, and Aarhus University. Since last year, he worked at the RCT, which is the Danish Institute Against Torture. RCT operates in many countries, among others South Africa, Guatemala, the Philippines, Sri Lanka, and Bangladesh. And the aim of RCT is to fight torture and protect human rights by ongoing projects. Mr. Magnussen now works as an advisor for ATSF, which is the Anti-Torture Support Foundation. And with these words, I would like to welcome him.
I have to make a small correction. It was an amazing introduction, but unfortunately I don't keep up a PhD. But else it's true all what you said, and I'm very proud, in fact, to be invited by the Organization for World Peace it's a big honor for me to be among those outstanding speakers as today. And I'm saying this first of all because I'm not a specialist on Iran or the region as a whole, but I have for many years worked with the question on using boycott and sanctions, international sanctions, as what you would call an instrument or a weapon in promoting a better world. And in that way, I'm proud also to be, I think it was Roger from the Charge d'Affaires of the Venezuela who said that we are proud that we belong to what is called the bad guys in this world. And I must say that especially I was pleased this morning to have a call and as a sort of confirmation of the conference today at the same moment when the Danish radio could tell about the re-election of the Bolivarian socialist movement at the presidential post in Venezuela. But then, as not being a specialist on Iran, I would start in a way to declare myself as in favor of using boycott and sanctions in some cases. If we look on the word of boycott and the weapon of boycott, I think we could regard it as a collective rejection, very often used by the workers' movement, also by ordinary people in rejecting trade, rejecting projects. And it started already in the 19th century. And in that way, boycott was, in a national context, a weapon also used by trade unions, and which in fact was very successful. And it's my impression that using sanctions both between the First and Second World Wars was in some cases a successful weapon. But I think also if we should evaluate it, it very much depends on in what context sanctions are used as an international instrument. If we look on maybe the most successful case on where you have a use of boycott and sanctions, then I would suggest that we look at the experience from Southern Africa, both from Rhodesia, now Zimbabwe, and especially the fight against the apartheid regime in South Africa. If we go to the look on the history, then already in end of the 50s, the African National Congress called for the use of boycott. This was later followed up by UN sanctions, and also with the support of the progressive world, the UN sanctions was harmful for the apartheid regime in South Africa. But I only say that it was harmful, and I think that what was very outspoken when we have to evaluate the use of sanctions from the UN in the case of South Africa, that it was also linked with the use of boycott, and especially a political mass mobilization. Later in the 90s, we have the examples that UN sanctions have been used against Serbia, also against Iraq. But if we then try to evaluate the use of UN sanctions, then we, on the one hand, as in the case of South Africa, it can be a very useful weapon, especially the combination of boycott and sanctions. But if we look at a lot of other cases where especially the United States, now and then together with their allies, have used sanctions, then sanctions are not neither based on what you could call a legitimate way. If we take the case of Cuba, definitely the use of US sanctions against Cuba have been very very big shame, and very caused a lot of problem for the Cuban people in obtaining specialized medicine and other things. Also, if we take the US calls for sanctions on North Korea, for the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, definitely the sanctions against North Korea have meant big suffering, starvation, created sickness for the Korean people, and so on. I'm not a specialist, but if we look at also the case of using sanctions against Iran, from the estimations that I have found out and read about, it seems that maybe 1.5 million people have directly suffered from these sanctions in Iran. So what to do if we cannot use the sanctions as a weapon or an instrument in the international politics? Then I think we should return once more in the evaluation to the case of South Africa. And I think this combination of using boycott and sanctions together with a political mass mobilization is a way forward. It was a great success when we on the international level put an end to the apartheid regime. I hope we can use the same combination of boycott and international sanctions against the illegal Israeli state. But I wouldn't, in general, advise use of sanctions without any conditions. I think that in a lot of cases we have to call for stopping the sanctions, and especially we should, instead of using that the international society and the UN use sanctions, then we should call for a process of negotiation and reconciliation. In the long run, also if we look on the historical experiences, then dialogue, reconciliations and negotiations is better than causing, as we have seen especially in Iran in the last decade, a lot of suffering for ordinary people. In fact, sanction, as we have seen in the case of Iraq, also Iran have in fact been what we could regard as a crime against humanity. Thank you for the word.
Thank you very much, Tue Magnussen, and I'm sorry for the mistake.
It's okay, you can take the next speaker before.
We will take another speaker, another presentation, because we still have some time for the break. The next speaker is the ambassador of Iran, Mr. Hamid Bayat. I was just informed today that you will be here today, so I didn't make any long presentation about you. I just know you're a senior diplomat with expertise in the Middle East, and you have lived in Sudan and Syria, and you believe that different cultures should work together to fix problems of peace in the world, and you're a very dedicated supporter of the Organization for World Peace. So please welcome him.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of God, the compassionate, the merciful, dear audience, distinguished ambassador and diplomats, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I would like to thank Mr. Abid Ali Abid, the chairman of World Peace, for organizing this seminar on the sanctions against Iran. At the outset, I would like to say that sanctions against my country have no legal basis and they are not new. My government and the people are quite used to them. Soon after the victory of Islamic Revolution, United States-led sanctions against my country started and have gradually expanded. The reason for this sanction is the opposition to the Islamic Revolution. The Iranian, since the 1979 revolution, has tried to be independent and pursue policies in its national interests. There is also no doubt that the Islamic Revolution has had a major influence on the Muslim wars. The Islamic awakening, which the world is witnessing, has its roots in the Islamic Revolution of Iran. Following the Iranian example, these nations are trying to rid themselves of foreign dominations and influence. Iran's independence and regional influence is the major cause of the animosity some big powers feel towards Iran, and they want Iran to fail in its policies so that others do not follow on the same course. I must add that the aim of the sanction is to stoke up dissatisfaction among the people of Iran, in the hope that this will lead to the toppling of the Islamic Republic. This policy, pursued by some world powers to reach their goal in the Middle East, is the gross interference in the internal affairs of countries. Imposing sanctions on Iran needed some pretext. Iran's peaceful nuclear program provided such a pretext. They have continued to increase the sanctions at a time our nuclear program is under full IAEA inspections. IAEA inspectors have conducted over 7,500 man-hour inspections, including unannounced inspections. This is a record in the IAEA history. The IAEA has not carried out inspection of such scale on the nuclear activities of any other country. The IAEA has declared in its reports that there has been no deviation in Iran's peaceful nuclear activities. Furthermore, nuclear weapons do not have any place in our national defense doctrine. The Supreme Leader of the Islamic Republic of Iran, in a fatwa, declared nuclear weapon forbidden from a religious point of view. I would like to stress that the Islamic Republic of Iran is the initiator of the idea of a Middle East free of nuclear weapons. It has also been a supporter of a world free of all kinds of weapons of mass destruction. The Islamic Republic of Iran pursues nuclear activities for peaceful purposes, including diversification of its energy sources. Iran is committed to its NPT obligations. Iran will continue to insist on its undeniable right to use nuclear energy and to enrich uranium for peaceful purposes. Iran has always been ready for negotiation based on mutual respects and interest, and without any precondition to find a solution to the dispute. To resolve the nuclear issue, balanced and consistent steps must be taken. I must emphasize that the two-track policy of sanctions and negotiations are not constructive. Dear audience, recently you have heard so much more about the sanctions. Also, the sanctions have adversely affected our economy. They have also made us work on the development of local capabilities. We have also tried to free the economy of its heavy dependence on oil. On the other hand, sanctions have also hurt the economies of other nations, including that of the Europeans, and they are the main losers. Sanctions imposed on Iran have not been to the benefit of the crisis-hit economies of Europe. These sanctions have also deprived European companies of good opportunities in Iranian markets. The sanctions will make our economy grow and be more independent in the medium and long run. But the Iranian people will be left with a negative image of those who impose sanctions of us. They claim that the sanctions are smart and targeted is a deception. It is clear that the sanctions are based on fake claims, and they target the lives of the ordinary people. One example of the cruelty of the sanction is to deny some cancer patients access to foreign produced medicines. It is for these reasons that we regard the sanctions inhumane and against human rights and international law. Ladies and gentlemen, as I said, this sanction will only strengthen the resolve of our nation to achieve political independence and enrich its economy. They will also create anger among our people because of their inhumane and unjust nature. The imposition of new sanctions, one after another, is a sign that the sanctions are not having the desired effect. Our nuclear program is peaceful, and no evidence has been produced to show any deviation to non-peaceful use. So the question is, what is the reason for all these sanctions and pressures. Although the sanctions have been costly to ordinary people, the real aim of the economic war is pressure on the Islamic Republic of Iran and creation of division and rift between the people and the government. Knowing my people, I can assure you that this policy will fail. We expect scholars, academics, NGOs, and the media to make the public aware of the facts and the dangerous games of some expansionist powers. I hope with the efforts of all the peace-loving and justice-seeking people will help create a world full of love and friendship and peaceful coexistence between the followers of all religions throughout the world. Once again, thank you, the organizer of this seminar. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hamid Bayan. It was very informative to hear your views about how Iran wants to decide for themselves whether or not they want to use make use of nuclear activities for peaceful purposes. And now we will take a short break, around 20 minutes. There are refreshments in the end of this room, and please feel free to help yourself.
راضی نبودم خودم چند تا غلط داشتم نه من نه خیلی بیدارم تو اتاق فقط جز همون یک کلمه نه دو کلمه نیمد خوزی هرچی گفتم کلمات کلام به سلام بکنم سلیس به کار باید ما بتونیم
Everyone got something to eat, and now we will continue with the program. We have 4 presentations before the dinner, and very much like everyone to stay for the dinner. There is a lot of food and a lot of delicious food. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Sorry food.
So the next presentation is with Feride Gillesberg. She is the Vice President of the Schiller Institute in Copenhagen. They cooperate with an American-based economist, Lyndon LaRouche, and the institute are fighting for, I think it disappears sometimes. And they are fighting for a just economic system for all continents. And with these words, please welcome her.
Hello, thanks for inviting me to speak. I just actually got it on short notice, so I just came last night from an international conference we had in the Frankfurt area in Germany. which was the conference on the global economic crisis and the collapse of the financial economic system in the transatlantic region, and the danger of a world war, actually a nuclear war. Coming from this conference and having attended people from all over the nation, from all continents actually presented at this conference, it gives me actually the optimism that it is possible to turn the situation around. Because right now we think, and Mr. LaRouche has been saying it also at this conference, that if you see on what is going on around Iran, around Syria, this policy of creating the extinction of civilization by religious wars, for example, George Bush began this policy of the clash of civilization, and Obama has continued it even on a higher scale. And the problem with this policy is actually this evil view of man that, the Green, for example, the Green movement represents as well, but that for example, Prince Philip in England represents, and the monarchy in England, but also unfortunately, Obama is a tool from the British, because he is more British and loyal to the British policy of Adam Smith than to the American Constitution and the American system of the Founding Fathers. The problem right now we think is that because we have a global financial breakdown of the transatlantic system, we have gone away from a policy in the US and in Europe where we have a regulated financial system. We had the Glass-Steagall banking separation, which we abolished actually in the late 90s, which the US abolished and the Western European countries went along. They abolished the policy of having an economic policy which serves the people. And replace it with the British root policy of, buy cheap, sell expensive, or actually loot the people. So what we witnessed right now is actually the financial crisis, which is not over. This is just the beginning. What we're seeing in Cyprus is just the beginning of a policy of letting the people pay for this crisis. In this relation, we think that it is not anymore our politicians who represent us. The politicians represent more and more the policy of Wall Street and the City of London. And this policy of Wall Street and the City of London, we think, goes directly to the monarchy in England, or to the policy of Prince Philip especially, who views the world from the standpoint that there's too many people in this world. They think actually that 7 billion people is too much. The earth cannot be all these people. They have this view, as Prince Philip actually has said himself, to reduce world population to 1 billion. Which means, what does it mean? How do you reduce world population? By war, by chaos, by sanctions. And we think right now that the policy of this doctrine by Tony Blair to intervene in nations, to say this preventive warfare, this policy of we intervene to make sure that nothing bad happens to these countries. It has been shown that in Libya and Iraq and so on, it is the opposite. The hypocrisy is not functioning anymore. And what we are seeing in Syria is actually the escalation of Al-Qaeda, where Saudi Arabia, together with Qatar, the British BAE systems and the British royal family is involved in creating Al-Qaeda to break the whole region up and to hit Russia and China, because this destabilization is going to break loose everywhere, and this is what the British wants, and unfortunately Obama wants, which I can come back just shortly back to, because this policy of getting rid of nation states and depopulation, because religious war is the way where we have seen in Europe in the 100 Years' War. This is the best way how to get people to kill each other. When you put a bottom of getting religious war going, you cannot just stop it. It took us in Europe 100 years, and we lost more than the half of the populations of Europe, because it ended in a dark age. So the message from this conference actually was that we need to have a just economic policy, beginning with having a Glass-Steagall to reorganize the banking system, and the policy of cooperation between nation states to promote a policy of making the desert green, of building infrastructure, of working together as nation states, because the dignity of an individual is the dignity of a nation. If we don't have sovereign nation states, who is going to represent the individuals in the nations? We have to establish the respect for the nation states, And we have to see the best in each other. Sanctions, this is actually a sophism, because the sanctions against Iran is also a way to punish, to create destabilization, and to say to the Russians, actually, or the Chinese, we have the power. And it is the policy of who is going to decide about the world. And we have a collapse of the system in the US and in Europe. And the British see this situation as their chance to put their policy of world reduction through, and to actually reverse time, that we don't have any more nation states anymore. So the policy of Lyndon LaRouche, and he has been working with Indira Gandhi and President Portillo in Mexico. We have been working in the US actually for many, many years to establish a cooperation between the patriots of the nations to say, what kind of projects do we have in our nations? What engineer projects do we have? How can we make our nation blossom? How do we cooperate in this? And this that you have patriots around the world who say, our nation should be existing here also in the next 100 years. So how do we develop it? Unite these people who think this way, and let's cooperate, because policy of imperialism never wins. But the question is if we can, in this times like this, where the danger of world war in the Middle East, or by attacking Iran, it will create a world war, or this escalation in North Korea, which is unfortunately, it is the provocation from the West, from the US is huge, so they want this conflict. They want a nuclear war, because what would reduce the world population most effectively in Asia? I mean, it's getting more and more obvious that this with North Korea is so hot, it has to be stopped right away, because it leads to nuclear war. So my final words will be that we have a fight going on in the US to actually impeach Obama and get the Franklin D. Roosevelt tradition back in the institutions of the USA, because we need the US to be part of mankind based on the basis that the respect of each other, but also that the benefit of the other is my benefit. This is in the history of the United States. It is there in the Constitution. So we have to revive it. This is what we're fighting for. And on the other side, the patriots of the nations who have visions to build their nations up should cooperate with us, with each other, but also should put the finger on. It is actually the British Prince Philip and the British Empire policy of world reduction. Population reduction, which is actually the agenda. And this is why the sanctions against Iran, the escalation in Syria is kind of a policy in the direction of total chaos. And it's not acceptable, because you don't punish, all this sophism about, but sanctions can help to pressure a nation. Never helped. Quite the opposite. It just makes things worse, like one of the speakers says. So, I think these are times where people have to ask all the time, what is the aim of this policy? What is the aim of the sanctions, more in a global term? What is the strategic situation? Why do they want a war now? I mean, what is at stake? Because we are weakening in the West. The system is collapsing. If we don't get a policy of Franklin D. Roosevelt for reconstruction, the oligarchy wants to, like the old Olympian gods, they want to drag everybody with them instead of giving up their system. But we have the fight going in the US, say no, this other tradition in the US is still there. We are fighting on a daily basis to mobilize the population, the Congress, and there is some effect, because the crisis just is hitting everybody. I mean, even in Denmark, the government wants to break the teachers. It's just, they have done nothing wrong, but the government wants to punish the teachers because somebody has to pay for the crisis, right? Mm-hmm. But it's not allowable. That's why in times like this, they're going to use all kinds of arguments to say, but we have to cut back. No, we don't have. There's a lot of money. There's a lot of money, but it's going into the banks to save the banks for the sake of the banks. But this is not acceptable, because if we want to have a future as a civilization, we need to put man's dignity up front again. And history has shown that we were able to do it before, and we should be able to do it also today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation. It is indeed very important to have focus on a just economic system, which is probably the most important factor in the sanctions against Iran. The next speaker is Ms. Caridad Yamira Cueto Milian, who is the ambassador of Cuba. She started her career in 1987 as third secretary in the legal division in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Cuba. Academically, she graduated in the field of international law, and professionally she worked as the counselor of the Cuban Permanent Mission to the United Nations in the US, and she also worked in Bratislava. And the title of her presentation is Sanctions, the Other Face of Genocide. Please welcome her.
Let me, at the outset, thank Mr. Abid, our dear friend Abid, for the great efforts undertaken in the organization of this gathering, and also for granting me the privilege of addressing this international seminar on a very actual subject, sanctions against Iran. The January-February 2012 issue of the magazine Foreign Affairs contained an article by Matthew Croen titled "Time to Attack Iran, Why an Attack is the Least Bad Option," along with other comments about other ways, including the tightening of sanctions to contain the so-called Iran threat. US administrations and its allies have continuously attributed to the international community concerns over an imminent threat posed by Iran, and creating unfounded fears about alleged Iranian plan to produce nuclear weapons. The US, its worst allies, and Israel had opposed and expanded economic sanctions, blockades, and undercover operations in order to sabotage the Iranian political project, and thus justify further aggression against this sovereign country, as well as the pretext of invoking internal resistance against the Iranian government. Many Iranian scientists have been exterminated in the manner that it has been said in some reports of many international agencies of the United Nations, can only be carried out by secret services specialized in aborting Iran's development. On January 2013, the European countries endorsed a new round of sanctions against Iran, targeting not only the oil industry, but also the central bank of the country. And some European foreign ministers even declared that they will go further, both in regard to oil sanctions and against financial structures. Western sanctions against Iran have caused not only huge effects on the economy and the banking system of this country, the sanctions has also severely jeopardized the inalienable right of Iran to free trade and commerce. But above all, the sanctions against Iran have provoked considerable shortage of basic foodstuff for the Iranian population and undermine the living conditions of the most vulnerable sectors of the population, among them women and children. In the case of Iran, as it has been the case in regard to other sovereign countries, sanctions are used as deadly weapons to make people surrender, abandon their fate, and make them feel trapped into desperation. In the opinion of the people of Cuba, in the opinion of the government of Cuba, there is no difference between sending people to concentration camps, as the Nazis hordes did, and depriving civilian population from their fundamental human rights to have access to food, medicine, and to the most elemental and basic human right, the right to live in peace. US, its Western allies, and Israel persist in their policy of tightening sanctions against Iran. But the peoples of the world, however, tend to think differently. And in this regard, I would like to quote from an article, a very extensive article, written by Noam Chomsky. Noam Chomsky is an emeritus professor in the Institute of Massachusetts. It was written in 4th March 2012. And after that, he also wrote a very interesting book entitled Making the Future, Occupations, Interventions, Empire, and Resistance. And in this article, Noam Chomsky said, the non-aligned movement composed out of 120 countries have vigorously supported Iran's right to enrich uranium, a view shared by the most Americans as surveyed by World Public Organization before the huge and offensive propaganda against Iran that was launched 2 years ago. He continues saying that Europeans regard Israel as the greatest threat to world peace. And he also said in the Arab world, a very small minority considers Iran as a threat. Rather, it is estimated that Israel and the US are preeminent threats. He says also, Western commentators have talked a lot in support of the US position towards Iran, while overlooking the fact that the vast majority of the population in Europe is against this sanctions regime, so revealing a position that needs no comment. And he continues, a primary concern now in the US is that Israel tries to provoke some action from Iran, which in turn incites US attack. He said also, meanwhile, Western sanctions against Iran are having severe effects and causing shortage of basic foodstuff for the Iranian population. And of course, I do represent a country, Cuba, that maintains a very friendly relation with Iran and that respects so much the right of Iranian people and government to self-determination and self-defense. And I also belong to a country in which 7 out of 10 Cubans have been born under the economic, commercial, and financial blockade imposed by the US against the island. 7 out of 10 Cubans have been victims of this policy of aggression. Since it was enacted by the US administration at the end of February of 1960s, the US blockade against Cuba has inflicted damages to the Cuban economy by $1 trillion. But this data does not explain the huge obstacles that the blockade imposed day after day to the economic development of Cuba, given the dictatorial ubiquity of Washington in a totally globalized world economy. This data does not explain either the immense human suffering that the Cuban people has experienced over one generation after another during the last 50 years. And by the way, this is a great paradox insofar as this aggressive policy towards Cuba has not public support in the US, because US people want to normalize their relation with the closest neighbor and just to end the embargo. We do reaffirm that there is not a bilateral measure against Cuba, as the government of the US mendaciously says. There is a blockade of extraterritorial character. And in this regard, in this context, we do also reaffirm that the blockade of the United States of America against Cuba is an act of genocide, as genocide was defined by the UN Convention of 1948 on the prevention and punishment of the crime of genocide, which refers to acts committed with intent to destroy in whole or in part a national, ethnic, racial, or religious group as such. And genocide was precisely the most important goal described with eloquence in a memorandum written in the United States Department as early as in April 1960, when they said the only foreseeable means of alienating internal support in Cuba is throughout frustration and discouragement. Measures should be taken, they said, promptly to weaken any conceivable economic life in Cuba, to bring about hunger and desperation, the overthrow of the Cuban government. Like in the case of Cuba, we in Cuba, the Cuban people and the Cuban government, we do consider that sanctions against Iran are also classified as an act of genocide against Iranian population. No doubts, Iran is a peaceful country, as it is undeniable that the United States, the most powerful and rich nation of the world, has hundreds of satellites that spy and monitor from space all the inhabitants of the planet. Naval, air, land US installations worldwide are equipped with thousands of nuclear weapons. And throughout the International Monetary Fund, the United States of America also handled at will the finance and investments of the world. And it's not an apprehension of the Cubans against the US. We do condemn the US policy. We do have nothing against the US people. The Cubans, we are used to deal with all types of aggression. We see clear who they are and which are the wishes of the current inhabitants of the White House and of their European allies. Their soldiers do not hesitate to urinate on the corpses of the Afghan citizens. Because of that, we do consider them the true masters of the hate against humanity, justice, independence, human rights, and freedom. But their mask should not fool anyone, neither the Cubans nor the brave Iranian people. Only few hours after the transcendent democratic victory of President Maduro, the son of the eternal commander Chavez in the Bolivarian Venezuela, let me finish my presentation in a very rapid way. I am a lawyer, and maybe because of that I am also very emotional. But let me finish my presentation by quoting a phrase from the eternal commander Chavez, a man that was in Iran, a man that loved so much Iran, the Middle East, and the Persian civilization as a whole. Chavez said, "Nothing is more powerful in the world than an idea whose time has come." The idea of the Iranian people, the idea of the Cuban people, the idea of all people, peaceful people of the world has come. Thank you very much. Skol, Ayaya, Salud, Inshallah. Thank you.
Oh, that's yes, with my permission, by the way. Thank you very much. It was a very interesting presentation, and thank you for highlighting the many basic problems Iran are facing due to the Western sanctions. And also thank you for highlighting the link between South America and Iran. It was very interesting. The next speaker is Mr. Christian Harlang. Mr. Harlang is an internationally and nationally well-known lawyer. The cases put forth by Mr. Harlang have been of public interest. For instance, did he work as a lawyer for the previous Prime Minister of Denmark, Poul Rasmussen, about the Danish involvement in the Maastricht Treaty. Mr. Harlang has for a long time worked very dedicated with cases which could be characterized for being very complex and not in everyone's interest to work with. He wants to help people who have been victimized by the establishment. For instance, has he been working for 80 young Danish Palestinians who were rejected the Danish citizenship by the previous Danish Minister of Integration. And it is said by others that Mr. Harlang usually takes cases no one else would take. And with these words, I would like to invite Mr. Harlang on here for his presentation with the title Sanctions and International Law. Please welcome him.
Thank you very much. Thank you much for inviting me to come and speak shortly on a matter that has my wholehearted interest, both in practice and also as a lawyer, as said by the Cuban ambassador. As a lawyer, you will be emotional, and I would say, like her, that I am sensitive to a law of international peace and security. And I think that the world would be a better place to live if there was more emotional approaches to comply with international law standards. I think that we would have avoided that total catastrophe in Iraq if the US, the British government and our government had respected the laws of the UN Charter and respected that no invasion, no attack, military attack can be made on any foreign sovereign state unless there is a clear mandate, that there is a decision taken by the Security Council to use military force, and that international law and rules are like the laws and rules that you have about how to behave in traffic. If you comply with the standards, you will not make damage to others, and you will not make so much damage to yourself. That is a conclusion that is elementary and should be elementary, as well as the respect of the principle of rule of law. My main point here today in this presentation would be that the atmosphere in which the sanctions and the pressure is taking place in the case of Iran, that atmosphere in itself is contrary to the international legal order, or so to speak, that the pressure is a part of a very regrettable habit of not complying with the obligations according to international law, and a tendency of not respecting internationally the principles of rule of law. It is very clear from the side of the US and its very unhealthy partnership with the State of Israel, that it is understood that the measure of taking steps to war should be counted on as a possibility. And therefore, it can be stated that the whole atmosphere, as I pointed out, is within a framework of war as a possibility. The Charter of the United Nations, adopted in 1945, to which almost 200 independent states have acceded, is outlawing the former practice of attacks on foreign sovereign states. The very important Chapter 7 is directly forbidding also threats, also the use of threats as an instrument. I will quote Article 39, which says that any threat to peace is forbidden, and threats made are in Article 39 labeled as a kind of aggression. One could have hoped that the absolute catastrophes of the unlawful Iraq war could have meant a change of mind in the new US administration. We saw in the top of the Bush administration a cynical lack of concern for international legality. Today, the President Obama administration, in their own interest, should learn from the mistakes of the former administration. Well, possibly they have learned some, namely that the practice of war aggression made and brought into reality will not lead to disasters. And possibly they are telling Israel so. However, they still lack to put away the rhetorics and the suggestions that are made directly and mainly indirectly in threats about realizing war, and instead of threats, they should involve themselves in peaceful dialogues. The threats are used as an instrument for pressure on Iran, and by that the sovereignty of nations that is so crucial for international law is not under respect, and they must instead step into the way, which is that the dialogue and the peace and not the threats of war would be the instrument to obtain peaceful situations, to get near to comply with the standards of the law, to which also the United States and Israel is obliged, namely to maintain international peace and security within the framework of international law. Thank you much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Christian Harlang. It was very interesting how you mentioned that the laws and rules only exist to take care of ourselves and others. And also you mentioned that it's important to bear in mind that these threats imposed on Iran actually are illegal because you're attacking the sovereignty of another country. That was very interesting. And the last speaker of today is Jan Øberg. He is also a very well-known personality. He is a Danish peace researcher and holds a PhD in sociology. I hope this one was right. Currently, he is the director and co-founder of TFF, which is the TransNational Foundation for Peace and Future Research. The foundation primarily works with civil society, conflict resolution, education, and peace building by different projects. Mr. Øberg is the author of several books, and continuously he publishes around 500 pages per year, academic pages per year. Furthermore, he received several awards for his peace-related activities, and the title of his presentation today is No Sanctions Against Iran. Please welcome him.
Thank you. This is high technology, but it's not high enough. Thank you very much, dear friends, for the invitation and for being here. This is a really funny thing. Oh, you're doing your best, that's fine. I should perhaps correct a little thing there too. When I was younger and had more energy, I probably published about 500 pages per year, but now I talk more than write. Do videos and things. It's easier than... Nobody reads books, by the way, anymore. So. Thank you so much. That's fine. We'll see what... It's a kind of sabotage from the US, I guess. Okay, I've been asked to speak not only about why no sanctions against Iran, whatever, because what I want to get to is what all intellectuals should do, and that is to say what should be done instead. It's not enough to be critical in this world. It is not enough for a doctor to criticize a patient because he's smoked too much and gotten cancer. It's still his duty, or her duty, to find out what can we do to heal the patient. That's far too much in peace circles, which has to do with down with, out with, criticizing this and that's the kind of Noam Chomsky syndrome, however good he is. We also have to come up with some ideas, and that's why I insist on peace research being an important word, and not doing anti-war research only. I have a few points why I think, on the basis of general knowledge, I've been working in former Yugoslavia where the sanctions have had devastating effects, only, no good effects. I've been working in Iraq up to a few weeks before the invasion, and I have, as a tourist, been to Iran last year and looked around. And you're an amazingly beautiful country. And my views on sanctions are based on simply that they don't work. Point one, they are used in unfair, asymmetric relations between strong and weak ones. It's normally not the weak ones who impose sanctions on the big ones. Secondly, they invariably hit innocent people. There is no way you can target them so strongly that it only hits a few at the top or something like that. Just ask the Iraqi people. The sanctions over 13 years cost about 1 million people their lives and sent 4 million out of their houses, some to foreign countries, some to other places in Iraq, which is quite an achievement, several times worse than Saddam Hussein ever managed to do in terms of killing and maiming people. These figures are out of a population of 24 million people at the time. 3, sanctions tend to create a mafia class who will work to smuggle in what is not available. And that mafia class will have a very nice time and a very nice life after the wars are over. Ask the Serbs and the Albanians, they were very good at working together in Kosovo. But the rest of the people suffered, and there's still a mafia in that part of the world. There's of course also a mafia in Iraq. And there will be, if there is not already, a mafia in Iran who will benefit from and earn enormous amounts of money from importing what is otherwise not supposed to be imported. 4, sanctions tend, opposite to what people think in the West, to undermine that middle class which can make social change. If the stated purpose is to make social change towards democracy or whatever liberate women or whatever bizarre ideas the Western politicians have. The worst you can do is sanctions, because sanctions impoverish people, so middle-class people are either falling down in the lower classes or falling up, jumping up in the little corrupt elite and smugglers and mafia. 5, sanctions are humiliating. They're also illogical, because in this case, as in other sanctions cases, there is not clearly stated how, and that's a philosophical question, how do you prove that you're not doing something? Normally we punish people because they've done something, and that's what people like Christian Harlang is working with as lawyers. I'm not a lawyer, but normally we punish people for what they have done. But here's a case where you raise sanctions against somebody who has not done anything and ask that actor to prove that he or she has not done anything. Very difficult to prove a non-action. 6, it invariably turns people into supporting the governments. Whether we like them or not, it does not turn into revolution or changes. All my friends in Belgrade were in the opposition. Although I worked with Milosevic in 3 governments, and the same also in Kosovo, I'm probably the only one who's been a mediator at the same time on both sides. But they said to me, Jan, when NATO is threatened to destroy our city and our breaches, we are standing together with government people and our president in this time of crisis where the existence of our country is threatened fundamentally. We will get rid of him afterwards. And they did that in the October Revolution 2000 under Kostunica. By the way, in parentheses, Serbia is the only country that's really made up with its war past, whereas the other countries that the West rewarded have not made up their account with their war leaders. They're celebrating them, such as in Croatia. 7, these things are totally counterproductive if the motive is to help or to put pressure on Iran to not acquire nuclear weapons. If the official statements, which we can start out with, whether we believe in them or not is a different thing, for the intellectual argument's sake, this is counterproductive. If you add up sanctions, the oil embargo, which nobody has talked about so far, the oil embargo, allegedly, according to media, costing $100 million per day for Iran, not to be able to sell its oil. And you add to that threats of destruction. There is no textbook in psychology anywhere in the world that tells that if you want people to come your way, you should threaten their existence, take away their bread from them, and prevent them from earning money. I don't know why we keep on applying principles in international politics that we know do not function, do not have any desirable results in civil society, in families, workplaces, etc. So maybe a course in some kind of psychology would be a good thing for most of the Western leaders who are running this show, in the belief, or making us believe, that that will lead to a more benign, cooperative Iran. Of course it won't. No matter what else you think about the Iranian leadership, or society, or culture, or whatever, but it's not going to lead to what the West is preaching, because there is no psychology textbook that will prove that that type of activities, speaking down to people, humiliating them, threatening them, all options are on the table, would lead to a more cooperative partner on the other side of that table. And finally, 8, the worst you can do is sanctions with no exit strategy. Now, the only solution the West has had so far is that when they think that Iran does not behave, you give the sanctions screw one more turn, a little more. Where does that end? It ends with the same thing as in Iraq. And since Iran's population is 3 times larger, it means up to 3 million people killed in Iran, if this keeps on for 10 years. Now and then we can begin to talk about genocide. God forbid it goes this far, but only a stupid politician who has never had a course in conflict resolution negotiations or anything related would argue that you should not clearly state when you raise sanctions what exactly the opponent or the other side must do to get rid of the sanctions. My own hypothesis is very simple. It won't matter much what Iran does. The sanctions will remain. Because fundamentally this is not about nuclear weapons and things like that. This is about trust. So whatever statement comes out of Iran in the future, such as we will never do it, we open all our laboratories, etc., the likelihood is that the West, led by Washington at the moment, will say, we're not satisfied completely, we don't quite trust you. Can we have our inspectors, parentheses, some of them from the CIA, etc., like in Iraq, and some Israelis too, can we have them all over the place in your country for 10 years? And you probably, as a sovereign state, say no thanks. If you remember what happened before the liberation of Kosovo and the bombing in '99, there were the Rambouillet negotiations. But there was a little appendix set up the second round of consultations. There were never negotiations between the Albanians and the Serbs, never met. They set up two different floors in that castle outside Paris, where the negotiation was wrong. But what there was inflicted in the appendix was that NATO should be allowed for 10 years to roam around anywhere in Serbia, not paying anything for taxes or anything, fees for airports or harbors, not being liable legally if they harmed any property or people in Serbia. To that, Mr. Milosevic said, no thanks, we're a sovereign state. And that was when the bombing started. That was when the bombing started. So, in this case, Tue Magnussen may be perfectly right that there are other cases where it will work. In this one, I'm pretty sure it will not work with these sanctions. Not work from any point of view. It will lead to some kind of catastrophe at some point unless a miracle happens. So what would I argue instead? I have a long list, far too long for this short presentation, but I will tell you that you can find these on videos and on articles at www.transnational.org. I'll repeat it later, there are enough, both of Iranian scholars in the West and 2 or 3 videos by myself, and a number of articles by scholars that are associates of the TransNational Foundation. So I'll just give you hints of what I'm thinking of. There ought to be a declaration from the West at some point, or some countries in the West, that only a negotiated solution is possible. All options are no longer on the table. I'm not talking now whether you think this is realistic to expect or it will happen. I'm just saying what should be done. If I was a mediator, what would I advise? What would I try to get the parties to do? These negotiations must be well prepared and not in this hopeless manner where you take a delegation from one side, a delegation from the other side, and put them on each side of the table. There are elaborate preparations before they meet face to face. I'd like to see some informal meetings in the mountain hotels of Switzerland or something like that. Something called negotiations, to which you have 300 journalists standing outside waiting for it, is not negotiations either. It seems that nobody on any of the sides know how you do, how you develop, how you process, how you prepare negotiations, because the worst that can happen is repeated cases where the parties meet and fail. I'll only confirm that we can't trust the others. So it takes preparations, one-on-one, 2 or 2, different groups, different levels, etc., before you have some kind of framework that is reasonable to discuss around the table. I think it's far the wrong way these negotiations have been approached by both parties, or all parties for that matter. Point 2, looking into the historical relationship between the United States in particular and Iran, it would be very helpful if somebody in the West, but particularly the US, could apologize for some of these activities earlier, such as the coup d'etat in 1953 against Dr. Mossadegh, democratically elected leader, or the support to Saddam Hussein for using chemical warfare on the Iranian people. We tend to remember Halabja in the West. We are just forgetting a little bit that also happened on the other side of that border, which I was enlightened beautifully to by the brilliant people at the Tehran Peace Museum. Now, it's not a peace museum, it's called the Peace Museum. It's a museum over the chemical destruction, chemical warfare on Iran, which is probably the largest since 1945. It depends on how you measure. But it's not a peace museum. I would love that place to be developed into a true peace museum where people could meet with parties, and there could be intellectual developments, there could be courses and MA taught in peace studies, etc. That's what the whole world needs, and Iran as a whole civilization should have peace studies. Should have peace studies, academic peace studies, based on Iranian culture, local culture, regional culture. Point 3. The whole thing should be done within the framework of the Middle East as a zone free of nuclear or other mass destructive weapons. There can be no solution to Iran without a solution to Israel, keeping on violating the United Nations General Assembly resolution about such a zone being established. I'm not saying you can do everything at the same time. That would also be naive. But what you can do is to have it as a part of the framework. There is no moral legitimacy either in arguing that Iran must be stopped from having nuclear weapons while you have at least 200 nuclear weapons, if not assembled, then quickly assemblable, in Israel. Now, it begs the question, of course, also, what could Iran do? And with due respect, this is just a scholar who is not an expert on Iran, what I would love to see Iran do. Simply to undress the West, in political terms. One would be to stop making any statements that could be interpreted, misinterpreted, misused by the West as a threat against Israel. We know that the present translations used, or what President Ahmadinejad has said, are fake. He's not denied the Holocaust, and he's not said that Israel should be thrown into the ocean or something like that. But why not make it very, very clear that we never said so and we don't intend to do so, and make it very, very clear so that even Western journalists can hear it, that this is a deliberately wrong translation. And you don't accept that type of humiliation and lies. Maybe there are some protocols, some kind of inspections that Iran, secondly, could say yes to, opening even a little more up. I'm not an expert on inspections. What I would raise as a demand is I would like to see, if I was from Iran, I would like to see the names, backgrounds on every inspector who comes into the country. To prevent what happened in Iraq, that a sizable number of them were CIA people, and demanding also access to schools, university laboratories, and conventional military facilities, which no sovereign country is willing to open up normally, at least not in the West. Would be lovely, 3, if Iran resumed the Dialogue of Civilizations, this fantastic program, which is one of the very few that has existed and could be revived, both as a goodwill gesture vis-a-vis all other cultures and countries, and inviting the West also to participate in such dialogues among intellectuals, cultural people, religious people, etc. 4, and this may be controversial, but I'm saying it out of a good heart, open up your country. Make it easy for people to get a visa. Why? My own experience. I fell completely in love with the Iranian culture, beauty, history, mosques, and of course, the people. I've visited and worked in quite a few countries around the world. I don't think maybe comparable Iraq, but basically I've never been so much taken care of. Such hospitality, such kindness, so much inviting you home, so much sharing news openly with you, on streets, parks, houses, shops, wherever. I wonder how a foreigner is treated, for instance, in Copenhagen, who comes with a camera and wants to take pictures everywhere, in a country that is threatened with warfare from my country where I come from my culture where I come from. Open that up, because anybody who goes to Iran now, let's say in the thousands or the millions in the future, they will come back and say, you cannot bomb this place. Human solidarity, people-to-people cooperation, all kinds of cooperation, research cooperation, NGO cooperation, women-to-women's cooperation. If we want to change the world, we cannot sit and wait for governments to change anything. They're playing their games. Almost everybody who's spoken today has said it's people who can change the world. And I fundamentally believe that as somebody who comes out of the Gandhian tradition. Don't expect your governments to save your lives or avoid wars. Governments are built on the idea of being able to fight wars, plan wars, fight wars, and hopefully each one of them winning them. Part of that charm offensive would also be to enlighten Westerners, and I think you really have to get the Indians going in Iran. This war is on. There's an economic war on. God forbid it gets into a military war too, but there's a political and economic war going on. Now, all wars take place at 2 levels today. One is the kind of political field, or the field where military activities go on, and the other one is on the internet, the media, social media, and blogs. I think it's very important to get through to media, through to public opinion in the West with an offensive of reliable information about Iran, its culture, its background, and also, for instance, such a banal thing as its military expenditures compared to the rest of the world. For the information here that I think I can leave is, if you want to look into who is likely to attack whom, one of the best indicators, if you only use one indicator, is military expenditures. The military expenditures of Iran is about the same size as Norway. It's about 1% of the United States military expenditures. It is 55% of Israel's, having 10 times more people than Israel. And it's a country that has not invaded anybody else for, I don't know how many 100 years, but at least 200, 250 years. I don't know, last you tried something with India, whatever it is, I'm no historian. But it's quite a long time. You haven't done anything in Iran like Saddam did with Kuwait. These are great possibilities for a public relations offensive that will undermine the present nonsense in the West about you being a threat to the whole world. Nobody who has a military the size of Norway starts a world war, unless they are taken to be crazy. I don't believe the leadership, whatever you otherwise think of it, is crazy. So, the good thing would be if Iran could move towards a position in which it becomes a mediator and peacemaker in the region. For instance, if it could become a mediator in the Syria conflict. For instance, if it could raise now and get a diplomatic, peace-oriented academy or something like set up in Tehran or Tehran University, where we could attract people from all over the world, plus Iranian young scholars who can learn conflict resolution and negotiation techniques. I can't believe that that should not exist there when it exists in the West and many other countries in Africa and God knows where peace research has now spread everywhere. So it's just a friendly advice. Start out, become a peacemaker. Become the Switzerland of that region. And nobody will touch you, everybody will love you. And finally, if there could be more activities in the West, ordinary citizens and journalists who could get a course in handling not war and the military and the violence, but handling conflicts. We need conflict journalism. We don't need war reporting. We need decent journalists, and they do exist, to go to Iran, interview people, and come home with different reports, what they have seen. We have all, no matter whether we talk Iran or something else, we have a huge obstacle today, which is called Western mainstream media. I was through the whole thing for 20 years with former Yugoslavia, in which I know that the Serbs were not the only bad guys. And it was not a black and white conflict. And there were certainly a few massacres made on the other side too, etc., etc. But in the West, Serbia is still the guy who cannot become the member of the European Union 20 years later. And Kosovo is a failed state that will remain a failed state. So if we could get better journalism, and the precondition for that would be an information war, which is a non-violent thing. A charm offensive by Iran trying to undermine the main arguments that we hear in the West. Because good-hearted, highly educated people, many of my friends do not believe what I say when I tell them about Iran and its military expenditures. They are already convinced that Iran is the most dangerous country on earth, maybe together with North Korea. This propaganda machine is very strong. And thankfully, we have all these new free media. There is a chance that we can actually change that opinion. And the moment the opinion changes, there cannot be a war and a bombing of Iran. Why? Because that is built on, any war is built on lies and propaganda. Any war is built on dehumanization and demonization. So if I could appeal to the Danish government, who never bothers with anything I know or say, it would be wonderful if we could invite a lot of Iranians to come here and study, being financed by Danish or EU scholarships, that we could begin to have an exchange humans to humans on all possible levels. That's the only way to get rid of war. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jan Øberg. It was very interesting, and especially the framework you provided for how peace can be achieved with the different measures. That was very interesting, and you also mentioned that the sanctions usually hit the wrong people, which is very important to bear in mind in the discussion of sanctions against Iran. Now, there are some closing remarks by the chairman of the Organization for World Peace. So, before the question.
No, in the end.
Okay,
before
yeah. So
question
we have
answer,
a question
for
and
half
answer
an hour
session
we
now.
have.
For half an hour now. So if you have any questions.
Yes, please one. Especially, I would like to ask why I remember this point. Mr. Yan, you mentioned that Iran should be sure about the people who come to Iran because of the CIA, and then you say at the same time open the country. I think it's a bit contradictional. How do you explain that it could be at the same time give more visa to people to come to Iran, and then you have the threat of the CIA? Thank you.
Well,
very, very good.
there are people around the world who are not CIA. Begin there. I talked about those who come in as inspectors to begin with.
Yes.
But of course you have to, that's why you have a visa procedure, but it doesn't have to take, a long time to get a visa. I think.
Yeah. Carry on, everybody. Yeah, Mr. Shaw, please tell your name before you ask any question.
I think I can speak up. I have a question to Jan Øberg. You mentioned several solutions or several options which Iran could do for their to make up for their PR. Why do you think that Iran is not using those options? I mean, they must know themselves how to make public opinion toward themselves.
No, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying they're not doing anything. And I know how terribly difficult it is to get through Western media, because there is an agenda in the media too. There's no free media here. There are free journalists perhaps on the internet and bloggers and etc. But a newspaper like Politiken is definitely not a free newspaper. I worked with it for 20 years, so I know a little bit about it. I also can tell you why I ended writing for Politiken. But my point is everyone can do more. And as long as the image of Iran is so negative in the West, then more must be done by Iranians and the rest of us. I'm committed to do as much as I can. My little foundation is reaching 3 million people per year. We are a barefoot organization only financed by people. We have no government money and no corporate money in TFF. And it's possible. Smart use of all the smart media. The point that really changed my life in this issue was when I sat with the Serbian Minister of Foreign Affairs, whom I cultivated a relationship over 3 years, many meetings. And at one point I thought I was close enough to him and I could say, I'm concerned whenever I go to Zagreb or to Sarajevo or I go anywhere else in former Yugoslavia, the ministries of foreign affairs have wonderful publications, they have all videos, they are very good at getting through, and they use public relation companies to get Mr. Izetbegovic into primetime television in the Western world. And then he said to me, well, we know that, but here in Serbia we believe the truth will come out. Now, neither Serbia nor Iran nor anybody else has time enough to wait for the truth to come out without working for that truth. It takes 20 or 30 or 40 years, and where will we be by then? This is the modern world. The war is also fought in the media and information sector.
Yes, please. Could we have the same comment from the Iranian ambassador about my question?
If you let me, sometimes when you discuss what's the situation, you think about Iran, what Iran should do and what should done for against this sanction or against this situation. But let me look at another side. Because I want to tell an example about this situation that happened in the world, not only in Iran. It's referred to definition of the democracy. When we think or speak about democracy, we study in the university and based on the social books, social study. The democracy, it means that the people in one society vote in favor of some parties, some groups, some people, and they choose the rule for the country. This is the things that we heard about this democracy. But in another side, they have United States of America absolutely do not believe to this definition about the democracy. Why? Let the audience take back 2 years ago in the region of the Middle East. Some of audience from Arab countries, and they know very well the situation in this region. Before 2 years, who ruled in Egypt? And who ruled in Tunisia? Who ruled in Libya? Who was Hosni Mubarak? And who was Zainul Abidin Ben Ali? They two presidents for more than 25 till 40 years. They are the important alliance of the United States of America in this region. And United States support these 2-3 dictatorships in this region. And after that, the uprising, and we call the Islamic awakening in this region, or that called Arab Spring, the United States said democracy and they want to support the people. Okay, that's good. And what happened in Egypt? Who was happened? The people in Egypt select the Islamic groups for the parliament. And then they choose Mohamed Morsi, the president of this country. But which country do not accept this result? United States of America. Why? Because they don't believe the rule of people. They do not rule absolutely the rule of people in any places. They want only any changes in the world based on their benefits. Because of this, they are against Islamic Republic of Iran. They did do anything after revolution against Islamic revolution, because in this country, in my country, the people ruled, not United States of America. Thank you.
Do you need the microphone?
Thanks. Because I'm Albanian from Kosovo, so things are more complex than what the media say. I agree with you on that, but it's a very, for mine, it's a very emotional question with the Balkans. But the Balkans or Yugoslavia is not Iran. Just for the record, actually, I think it would be very, very helpful to have a kind of a list of the effects of the embargo on the human tragedy. Like, for the record, the press or the media and the rest.
Mr. Ali, you were saying something? Ahmed Ali? You want to say something? He wants comments.
بالنسبة للسؤال موجه إلى سعادة السفير الإيراني، يعني لماذا كل هذا العداء للجمهورية الإسلامية منذ السقوط؟
I can translate this.
Okay, please.
The question is to Mr. Ambassador of Iran, and the question is why is such hate against the Republic Islamic of Iran.
ومنذ انتصار الثورة الإسلامية في إيران.
And that's from the beginning of the. You understand maybe yourself?
Yeah.
Yes. It's from the beginning. I hope that I translate correct. It's from the beginning of the revolution.
الشق الثاني من السؤال: لماذا لا يحترم دعاة الديمقراطية اختيارات الشعوب في انتخاب أنظمتهم وقياداتهم؟
Yes, I translate for. And why they don't accept the democratic rules? Yes, please,
لماذا لا يحترمون دعاة الديمقراطية اختيارات الشعوب في أنظمتهم و
Yes. Why? Because they believe in the democracy. Why they don't believe when they believe in democracy? Why they don't accept democracy when it comes from people?
ألم يختار 98% من الشعب النظام الإسلامي وقياداتهم؟
It isn't like it isn't because 98% of people have elected this government.
وفي بداية انتصار الثورة الإسلامية لم تكن هناك برنامج نووي حتى يعني يفرضون عقوبات على.
In the beginning of the revolution, there weren't a nuclear program.
وقد دعموا نظام صدام لإسقاط هذه الأنظمة الديمقراطية. فلماذا يخالفون؟ يعني هم يدعون الديمقراطية ويحاربون الديمقراطية.
Yes.
ديمقراطية الشعوب طبعا.
Yes. They helped Saddam Hussein in the name of democracy, and then when the democracy comes from the people, they don't accept it. Why? Yeah. I hope I have read it correct.
Thank you. As I told in my speech and my explained what's the definition of democracy, belong to the United States of America and this enmity against Iran during revolution, after revolution, it's clear that the revolution in Iran, when happened, changed situation in the region completely. First of all, the Islamic revolution in Iran toppled an alliance regime with United States of America, and it was the regime of Shah. The rule of Shah was a very big power in the region, alliance with the United States of America. So when toppled Shah in region, it means that the America lose a very important benefit from this region. Because of this, they tried to affect to the revolution, and they do, as I told, anything that can do against the revolution. For example, From the beginning, at the first year after revolution, they tried to make a coup d'etat with some commander of army against revolution, and the biggest things that they did against revolution was imposed 8-year wars against Iran. And this one, unfortunately, it's not only imposed the Iranian people, it's also imposed the Iraqi people, because this war, during 8 years, damaged the construction of the Iran and Iraq, and also during this war, some people from two sides killed. And after that, the sanctions, political sanction, economic sanction, and everything that they try to do for opposition against the Islamic revolution in Iran. Another thing that mentioned, and I told in my, and I explained about the democracy and how America thinks about democracy. I told that they think and they believe democracy based on their benefits. The very simple example, and they think that we can see easily in the region, in the situation in Egypt, as I told. In Egypt, after toppled Mubarak, the people choose Islamic group. 70% of the parliament was in the hand of the Islamic group. And after that, Muhammad Morsi was the new president of Egypt. And now what happened in Egypt? It is try to topple an Islamic president that comes from the vote of people. Why? Because Egypt is a very important country in the region, and United States of America absolutely do not accept the rule of this country be in the hand of the Islamic group. If any person or group or party in Egypt was with United States, they support them, like Ahmad Shafiq during the presidential election. If any new rule in this country will be in the group that do not respect the people and the vote of people, they support them, because they only think about any group, any party should rule in this country that support the benefit of the United States of America and their alliance in the region.
Yeah.
Hi, my name is Alejandro. I'm from Venezuela, and I see here in this discussion that we are talking a lot about what's the problem with Iran, what was the problem in Iraq, what's the problem in Syria, what's the problem in Libya. I mean, and I will link this with something that you said about the dehumanization. That is like something that I think is very important here. Because what I see here is that we are shifting, like putting the troubles, the problems in that regions. You know? We are looking for answers. Why these people are wrong? There is something wrong with these people because they're problems. They have problems. That's why we put sanctions to them. This is why they cannot develop nuclear technology, because these people are dangerous, because they are kind of not very intelligent, or they are violent, or something like that. No? This is a policy that has been implemented for a very long time. I mean, if we go to 500 years ago, 1492, when the Spanish went to South America, they went there and they conquered this land because these people were not like right people, like they were not humans. They did the humanization of some other people. This is why you can actually, when you dehumanize somebody, it's very nice because you can kill them and it's okay. This is why we are killing people in the West, is killing people in Iraq, is killing people in Libya, is killing people everywhere. No? This is why I would like to make a comparison of, we say there is a problem in Iran. And I don't think that there's a problem with Iran or with the Muslims, because there's also this kind of demonization of the Muslims. You know? Because here is also all these people are bad or something. And I remember an actor saying in America, that he said, somebody asked him, what is the problem of the black community, of the black people in America? And he said, there is no problem of black people in America. This is a problem of the attitude of white people against black people. So it's a white people problem. This is why I would like to say that there is a Western problem here. The problem is not Iran. The problem is the West. The attitude of the West against Iran. And I would like to also, here in the West, we are used to say, oh, it's the government. When they are sending these 6 airplanes to Syria to bomb the people in Libya, nobody said anything here. And many Danish people I know that are against that. I don't know any Danish person who is in pro of sending airplanes to Libya. But no, I didn't see anybody saying nothing. So I feel that this problem should be put in place to something that we in the South should do is tell the people, not the government, not the West government are bad. No, tell the people, the Danish people, the German people, the American people, guys, your taxes are used to kill people, to make drones, to make flight fighters, the airplane fighters, F-22, all these things. You have to do something because it's your problem. It's not just this government and, oh, okay, you're not doing anything. They know that. You know? And yeah, I mean, for me it's also Venezuela, you know, we are kind of with Iran and everything, but the oil that Venezuela sell to America and Europe is used to make gasoline that is going in the airplane that are going to bomb the Arab community. So this is a Venezuelan problem, but not the problem of the government, the problem of the people. So I think that here I would like to address this issue. That something that we can do also is talk to the people and address this issue, people from people, and it is about I like this transnational organization, because I would like to see this transcultural kind of dynamic in order to address this kind of issues, people to people, because it's our problem. When Denmark is sending airplanes to Libya, it isn't my taxes. I pay taxes here. This is me. It's not the government. It's me doing that. Thank you.
Please.
if you don't mind, please, I would like to ask you, considering I'm not optimistic about peace, I can tell you, because it's a question of interests, and people who have the big interests, they are so jealous that they are unhuman. They use the Indians, make them unhuman because they exploit them, their interests. Therefore, I think that when you travel, you make relation with the countries. We love the countries. You become a person like me. I love everybody. I don't know where I'm from, but it's not enough. We cannot stop those people who are aggressive. Those people who have very big interests. I think we have to work for it. I think the small should get together to make force to go against this. And my question, if we are not naive if we think that we appeal to the human feelings. Yes, thank you very much. And I will be very pleased if Mr. Yang will answer me, because you are used to analyze.
Is there a last comment?
I have also a question. You please say.
Gloria to God.
أحب أن أخاطب المجتمعات لحقوق الإنسان.
I like to address my speech
والمجتمع المدني.
to people who respect the human rights. And
من هذا السلاح والمجتمع المدني.
And yes, and the civil society, yes.
من هذا السلاح الجديد.
But the new weapon. Based on the new weapon. Yes.
السلاح الجديد that means
new
weapon. What do you mean? What you mean?
New weapon. بعنوان الحصار الاقتصادي.
Yes, the sanctions in the name of this new weapon. Yes.
سيف ذو حدين يسلط على من قبل الدول الكبرى على رقاب الشعوب.
Yes, it has two tranches. It's like to cut, and it's on the neck of people.
أين هم من هذا السلاح المؤلم؟
Why do you use this painful arm?
الشعب العراقي دفع ثمن كبير من جراء هذا الانحصار.
Yes. The Iraqi people paid very painful price from this weapon.
وآلام إلى هذه الساعة.
And the pain is persisting into this moment.
قتل من خلال هذا السلاح 1,200,000 طفل عراقي.
With this weapon died 1,200,000 Iraqi child.
لذا أتمنى من العاملين بهذا الجانب.
Therefore, I hope from the people who are working in this field. مين هذه الناس؟
هم الحقوق المجتمع المدني.
Yes,
those are supposed to.
This is to the human rights people who are working in the human rights field and with the civil organizations. Yes.
لهذه الأسلحة القاتلة في هيئة الأمم المتحدة وغير ذلك.
And to work in the United Nations, yes, against this.
أو نستطيع الآن بحضوركم وأنتم جالسين في المقدمة أن نشكل هيئة أو بعنوان للخوض مع هيئة الأمم المتحدة من أجل هذا الشيء.
Yes, or I suggest.
للدفاع عن الشعوب.
Yes, I will suggest that this panel and people here we can make a committee which we can defend people.
بارح العراق اليوم إيران وبكرة ما تعرف من.
Yesterday Iraq, today Iran, and we don't know who tomorrow.
وأشكركم جزيلا.
And thank you very much.
I'm Iranian, so my name is Sabah. We have kind of observed that after the Iraq invasion to Iran, this kind of has strengthened the Iranian regime in many ways, in political terms, in industrial terms, and also like their foreign policy. And me as an Iranian citizen, as a young person, I kind of feel that the sanctions, the new sanctions, the story of sanctions is doing kind of the same to the Iranian government. And the Iranian leaders also has mentioned many times that all these sanctions, they are helping us to grow. All these sanctions are helping us to get stronger than before. And I do believe and I do agree with that. It's just a little bit suspicious that if the West, if the US are the enemies of these leaders, why would they take policies that would help them to get stronger about their policies, about the continuation of their existence in this country? Why would the US and the West apply policies that would help this regime to continue ruling the country? I would like to ask a question from you. I forgot your name, sorry.
Jan.
Jan, and Iranian ambassador. Thank you.
No, please.
As you said, my friends, that it is clear that any foreign pressure from outside will help the unity of the people. And your example is completely very good and very clear example that during the imposed war, during 8 years, it affect positively to our unity of the people and also for the progress of the industries and especially in the military industries and also in the constructive industry in Iran. So based on this, we believe that this sanction maybe affects negatively also in our economy and in our ordinary people in Iran. But in general and finally, it helps to be more power than before. Because a few days before, I have an interview with one paper in Denmark. It asked me, your country needs power, needs to support the government. Because of this, your country try to achieve the nuclear weapon. I told that we do not need absolutely the nuclear weapon because every country and every government that have support from the people, they do not need the weapons, any weapons to support them. Because any countries that do not support by people, these governments will topple. But any countries, any government that have support with people, these government do not topple. If they imposed also 8 years wars to this government. 2 months ago, the people of Iran celebrate 34th anniversary of the revolution in Iran. Many people have demonstrated this ceremony. This sign, this one sign that the people of Iran with the government, with the Iranian government. So, because of this, we believe that this sanction and any pressure to Iran cannot affect to the continuation of the revolution of Iran. Thank you.
We will take total 3 more questions. If anybody, please, who want?
We need a comment from Yamira.
Please, sorry, I apologize. Yeah.
And then I think we can take 2 questions.
Well, my question is not completely answered. I would like to hear your opinion as well. I'd like to hear it out that during the war between Iraq, which was supported by the West to somehow getting rid of the Iranian regime, just right after the revolution, we have lost about 1 million of lives, and we've been in the world the second victim of the weapon of mass destruction in the world. And now we are losing lives because of the sanctions. And I would like to know that, for example, you have mentioned that the sanctions would create mafia. And in Iran, we don't feel that we have mafia, but there are, during the sanction times, there are a lot of things in the industry that is held by some governmental organizations, such as Revolutionary Guard, for example, that we feel, we are convinced that it's normal that, okay, we cannot do this, we cannot build houses, for example, because of the sanctions, we cannot do this and that, so we give the responsibility to Revolutionary Guards. Or we give the responsibility to some bigger governmental organizations that they can build houses, they can help the economy to grow during the sanction times, which results to strengthen the Iranian regime. And I would like to ask a clear question that why would West help the Iranian regime when on the media they would say they are the enemy of the Iranian regime?
Okay, thank you very much. Let me try to answer a couple of the other questions that came also. I am not at all a pessimist. If I look at the last 50 years of change when it comes to people coming together to change the world, the record is quite good. You can begin with Mahatma Gandhi and his movement against the British Empire. You can take the basically non-violent revolution against the Shah of Iran, at the time the most militarized country in the so-called Third World at that time. You can go on to Solidarność in Poland in 81. You can continue to the Velvet Revolution on the Václav Havel in Czechoslovakia at the time. You can even say, which was never printed on the front page of Politiken, that thanks to non-violence and people's movements, we ended the Cold War without ending it in a nuclear war. According to all statistics, the relationship between the US and the Soviet Union, NATO and the Warsaw Pact should have ended in war. It did not. Thanks to women, thanks to peace movements, anti-nuclear people, thanks to intellectuals, thanks to priests, human rights people in the East, etc. Now that's quite an achievement, dear friends, because if that had not happened, we might not have been sitting in this room today. You move on to Belgrade, that had a non-violent revolution, as I mentioned. You can continue to Ukraine and Georgia and other places, and Tunisia. You can add to that the women's movement globally. Don't tell me that that has not changed the world. You can add to that finally that in 1973 we had the first global UN conference on the environment. Now don't tell me there's any politician today who can rise in a podium and say that the environment is not important. So the world is changing for the better, it's just that we're not supposed to see it. And then there are some wars and things going on and stupid people who have nuclear weapons, but it will end. And contrary to what some of you have been saying, I'm optimist also because the US empire is coming to an end. Not the US, hopefully, because I've never been anti-American. But the empire will fall. All empires fall at some point, and if they also try on Iran, that might be one more nail in the US empire coffin. God forbid it happens. I would like it to be peaceful as under Gorbachev in the Soviet Union. But you cannot exclude the possibility. The only thing that the Americans are very good at compared with the 60s today is to bomb. Their economy is lousy, their cultural penetration is bad, people hate the Americans around the world. Not the Americans as people, but the government. So that is also why I think maybe you will be surprised to see that China and Japan and BRICS countries will not protest very strongly if Iran is bombed. They will sit down and then they will say, very good for us. This will weaken the United States. Unfortunately, Iranians will have to pay a price if it happens, but it will weaken fundamentally the US empire. And that's what China and the BRICS countries and others would like to see. Secondly, just let me say, everything I said at the podium up here was under the assumption that we're talking about nuclear weapons as the real issue. I personally do not believe that. I think that, like in Iraq, this is a pretext. And that the agenda is one, regime change, the agenda by the West. And secondly, to, of course, get a control with oil and gas. Exactly, it's Iraq repeated. Now, I hated to hear, and I wrote against it, that Iraq was a mistake. They made a lot of mistake in the sense that they didn't understand that it would take 10 years and it would lead to a new dictatorship and things like that. But it was not a mistake to intervene there. They wanted that. So, I'm not too optimistic in that sense. Tariq Aziz, number 3 person in the Iraqi government at the time, I had 3 hours conversations with him. He said, Jan, there are 3 things we have asked the Americans, and they could get all the oil they wanted. 1, pay us decent market prices. 2, treat us with respect. 3, have no CIA people in our country. But what did the Americans want? They were not happy with just being able to buy the oil from some regime. They wanted to control the sources. They wanted to have the bases close to the sources. And if you look at the map today of concessions made to Western and Chinese companies drilling oil, there is not a square kilometers left of Iraq that is not portioned out. Again, I say God forbid that it happens in Iran, but that is also a perspective. So, I think I should stop there. I'll just say, this talk about democracy, I'm very sad to say, I think democracy in the West is not democratic.
Yes.
And I'm saying this with the relationship, finally, I haven't talked too much already, with Denmark. I've been on the Danish government's commission for disarmament and security for 10 years in the 80s. And I knew that there were serious people in the parliament, in Folketinget, who wanted that war should not happen. They were social democrats, some of them were right-wings, lots of them were Socialist People Party, etc. We had parliamentarians who were skeptical to war. Now, what happened in the case of Libya for the first time in the Nordic history? What happened was that with the exception of the xenophobic, very small Swedish Democrats, as they call themselves, all parties in Denmark, Norway and Sweden, from the extreme left to the extreme right, voted for bombing of Libya. Now, I've lived it long enough to know that there are a number of Danes who do not think that countries should just be bombed and occupied and we should be a rogue state. At this moment, they have no representative, not a single parliamentarian in Denmark whom they can trust will vote no to the next war. Now, if you call that democracy, I prefer authoritarian rule. But I'm not giving up fighting for what was originally democracy, namely that people could influence what was happening. And for that we need to democratize the democracy of the West. It is not an export good to anyone because our own is not good enough anymore. It's disintegrated. You can't be a president of the United States without money, without the support of the corporations, etc. Who the hell says that this is democracy? So there's much to be done, but I refuse to believe that that democracy which has changed the world for the better the last 50 years, namely people's actions, people's education, people coming together exactly as you said, making popular movements, that is the only thing that has proved to be able to change the world for the better. When governments get in and they use violence, everything gets worse. There is no successful war. Take Somalia, where I worked for 4 years. Take Iraq, take Afghanistan, take Libya, take wherever you go. There is no better result today overall, former Yugoslavia too, where it's better because we used violence. The moment you use violence, introduce weapons, ammunition, and all that we do in Syria now, there will not be peace. Or the miracle will happen, there will be peace because people refuse to have that. And don't forget, finally, 98% of the people in conflict zones are for peace and they don't use violence. But they never get to our media. The warlords we know, the Caradiches, the Mladiches, and God knows what you have heard about. But you never heard about the peace lords and the peace ladies and the peace children, or all the people all over the place who were against the wars in their own society. How much support has the Western democracies given to the non-violent fighters in today's Syria, who are 98% of the people? They've given them zero. And when Kofi Annan tried to build on that force, he got 30. He got 30 civilian monitors. No wonder he withdrew and said, nobody wants to help me achieve this peace. And then they poured in weapons. Why don't the United Nations and each state have peace academies with at least 1,000 in each state who can go out and be mediators and conflict analytical people? Had Kofi Annan suggested bombings with F-16s, it would have happened. Now he said, I have a peace plan without weapons. And everybody sabotaged him, decent as he is. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your questions and your answers. And now the chairman would like to give some closing comments.
Once again, thank you very much, everybody. I have some closing remarks. What we have learned today, I was feeling that I'm a student of beginning classes. But one thing, beside gentleman with me, he encouraged me in some beautiful words, the patience and courage. It was really loving words, few words but nice. I would, in my closing remarks, I would like to say, first, I have a question from all of you, to all of you. Do you believe in peace? Please.
Yes.
And you need that the sanctions against Iran have no moral values, no legal values?
Yes.
So, let's start. I will not take a long time because my speech time has gone. So we have achieved a great target today, that we can see the best example of the integration, and we are integrated to a one target, one goal, and that is peace. We are agreed that the sanctions are not the solution towards peace. We are agreed that no Zionist or the imperialist state can take their benefits through the weapons of, even the worst weapons than the weapons of mass destruction, that are sanctions. We do believe if the sanctions are not helpful in 62 years against Cuba, Iranian nation has also courage to face such crisis without any acceptance of any masters on their country or for their people. So let's say the conference of the day is so successful that the people sitting here are agreed for a greater cause, and that cause is peace through negotiations, through understanding, through listening each and other, and through work together for a better life, for a better prosperous future, and for a better world that we are looking forward for many, many years to be ahead. May God bless all of you, and thank you very much, all my guests. I would like to thank all diplomacy over here, the diplomats from Armenian Embassy, from Iranian Embassy, from Algerian Embassy, from Pakistan Embassy, from Cuban Embassy, from Venezuela, and from Bolivian. I must say thank you very much for your support. Your presence has made this event really a better event, and I must call an international conference. I must say, all of you, that we have to take our white flag everywhere we can go. We have to talk about the peace. We have to talk about the tolerance. But I will also add the comments of Mr. Jan that if Iran wants to be to use this condition, we have to open the door in a more better way. But I want to tell one thing. There are 38,000 Iranian students. They are playing the role of the ambassador of Iran, but there is an unfortunate, they cannot get enough money to continue their education. We need the suggestions for such things, how to continue our efforts. Iran is doing best, we are doing best, and now, as my friend said, and the other speaker said, the timing's running when the devil and the disciples of the devil and the devil disciples will run away when they will look the force of the people, they are together under a white flag looking for peace. God bless all of you. Thank you. Well, we have photo session. Meantime. Yeah. Okay. Please, we have a photo session.
Yeah?
Yeah,
there is a photo session for the panel.
Yes.
We
will make a different. First, we can have the picture of the panel, and after that, anybody can come.
Then a family photo.
Yes.
Would be better.
Oh yeah, I said everybody can join us later. If there are sitting any other diplomats, they can also come, please. We will make it everyone. No, I said we will make everyone chance. The Bolivian ambassador, you please, Miss Lady. Anybody can come, please. Everybody can come as a family. Please. What's next to it? Please, please. Hello. Come on.
Acerca la oíste. ¿Qué te parece acerca?
Yes. Sabah. Sabah में वो organizer उस तरफ ask her to come here.
सिर्फ स्पीकर को चॉकलेट देनी
नहीं
अब स्पीकर को सिर्फ चॉकलेट देनी है आपको पता है ना
खामोश रहे
अब सिर्फ 6 चॉकलेट है
बोलो नहीं मुझे पता है आपको